All right. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first event of the inaugural Online Writing Centers Association Conference. This will be our plenary session entitled Embracing Interdependence in Online Writing Center Work, featuring Beth Nastachowski, Lisa Nicole Tyson, and Megan Boshart-Burrell. So here are some basic participation guidelines for this evening's session. Please note first that we are recording, so just keep that in mind if you want or don't want to have your voice or image on camera. You can always put questions or comments into the chat. We have sign language interpreters with us this evening from Moore Interpreting LLC. The interpreters will be spotlighted during the talk, but if you cannot see the interpreter at any point, please send a direct chat to the OWCA Conference Committee user in the Zoom room. We ask that you refrain from turning on your own audio until the Q&A session. However, please feel free to post comments and questions to the chat at any time. We will return to them during the Q&A session. And to get to that chat, here's a quick refresher. So select the chat button at the bottom of the Zoom screen and a new window will appear with the chat. So I think that is all that we have in terms of initial information. I'm going to hand things over to the session presenters this evening.
Great, thank you so much, Bree. I am going to go ahead and share my screen with all of you that has our slides on it. Unless, Bree, you were doing that, I just want to make sure.
You've got it. You've got
okay,
it.
All right, cool. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share that screen. All right, hopefully everyone can see okay. So thank you all for coming. We are so excited to meet with you all today and to discuss interdependence in online writing center work, particularly how we see interdependence related to collaboration and community, which we feel are core writing center values and central to our work as writing center administrators. The three of us presenting are all members on the OWCA Executive Board. My name's Megan, and I'm the director of the Old Dominion University Writing Center. And my co-presenters today are Beth Nastachowski from the Walden University Writing Center and Lisa Nicole Tyson, or Elle, from the Old Dominion University ePortfolio Studio. Just to give you a brief overview of our presentation, we'll be discussing the various layers in which interdependence is a key part of our writing center work, especially in terms of collaboration and community. So we plan to share some specific context that we're all coming from and identify the various layers of interdependence that we recognize in our work. This isn't to say that there may not be others. In fact, there may be more within your own context in more nuanced ways of thinking about these layers. But we hope that by sharing the layers of interdependence we've identified and giving some clear examples of how these layers play out in our day-to-day writing center work, that we can help you also think about those layers in your own work. And more importantly, and something we've all been contemplating as we worked on this plenary together, is how we can continue to identify or create new layers of interdependence within our writing centers that are mutually beneficial to all of those involved. We think that by recognizing that the things that we value, like collaboration and community, are key parts of interdependence, and embracing that interdependence, we can create more sustainable writing centers and writing center labor practices. In other words, we need to rely on others and not only ourselves for online writing center work to flourish. We realize that not everyone has the support systems within all of the layers that we'll be discussing. So we hope to highlight the ways in which you can build interdependence within the communities in contexts that you're part of too.
All right, thank you, Meg. So we see interdependence as collaboration, community, and sustainability. Our work is only possible when we're part of a community. So even if this is your first foray into the wider writing center community, you have a community within your own writing center and within your own institution. So without these communities, collaboration would be pretty difficult. We do know sometimes it can be kind of hard to let yourself rely on others, but relying on each other and encouraging each other in our goals is crucial to creating that community of practice that benefits everyone involved, the tutors, their administrators, and the institution at large. So we do a lot of hard work, and it can sometimes be kind of thankless, but if we're trying to do it all alone, it really becomes unsustainable. So as Meg said, we hope that sharing some of our experiences will help you think of ways to incorporate interdependence in your own writing center and in your own practices. And we hope that you're able to make some lasting connections throughout our first OWCA conference.
Yes, agreed both with Meg and Elle. I also wanted to mention that as I was thinking about interdependency, I've been reflecting on the ways that collaboration, community, and sustainability have been highlighted over the last 2 years during the pandemic in particular. As I'll explain as I talk about my local context, and as I think we're all thinking about, our writing centers have had to respond to the pandemic and to COVID-19. And in doing so, our writing center has embraced certain values, practices, or approaches to working with both students and our staff that have involved collaboration, community, and sustainability during COVID. But all of which have ultimately led to more inclusive practices for our students and our staff. Part of our work has been identifying those practices and committing to continuing them as the pandemic ends and then into the future. In this way, COVID-19 has also made interdependency even more salient, but has also highlighted ways we can embrace interdependency more within our writing center, introducing practices that we want to continue after COVID.
We felt it might work best if we introduce you to our local context first before we share some specific ways we see interdependency play out in those contexts. So my writing center at Old Dominion University is currently a hybrid writing center. By that, I mean that not only do we offer both in-person and online tutoring, but our staff is working some in person, some entirely online, and some people do some of their hours in person and some online. So it's a little bit all over the place, but we're trying to make things work. Last year, we operated entirely online because of the pandemic. Honestly, in a lot of ways, this year has been even more difficult because our various staff are working in various contexts and in different places, different modalities. Our writing center is staffed by graduate students in English only, and we serve both undergraduate and graduate students from across the disciplines, including many students who are working on degrees entirely online. And this was the case before the pandemic. So we currently offer one-on-one support in person, online synchronously, and online asynchronously using screencasting. We also offer tutor-led workshops, class visits, and graduate student writing groups.
My local context is unique in many ways, although it often feels strange to me since I've been with the Walden Writing Center for so long. We are an entirely online writing center and have been ever since our inception, serving an online university with primarily graduate students in the social sciences. So our writing center is staffed by writing instructors who provide typical writing center services like Meg mentioned. We provide asynchronous paper reviews, email Q&A, and course visits, along with teaching students via residency and webinar presentations, and contributing to university writing curriculum and supporting faculty writing training. All of our writing instructors are full-time professionals, so they have advanced degrees and often have experience teaching RetComp. Because we are an entirely online remote team and work with students online as well, the pandemic really brought changes more to how we needed to support staff and each other. This need to support staff and be particularly attentive to interdependence has been highlighted this year as we've continued to navigate the pandemic, along with some changes at our executive leadership level at our institution and reorganization changes within our larger academic success center.
So I actually work at the same institution as Meg, ODU, but I work in the ePortfolio studio. So in the studio, our focus is on tutoring students in digital composition, mainly ePortfolios, but also many other digital tools to create multimodal content. Our staff is mostly undergraduate students from varied disciplines, and we usually have at least one graduate assistant, since we do tutor both undergraduate and graduate students, and some graduate students do prefer to work with a fellow graduate student. Even before the pandemic, we also had online offerings since, as Meg said, ODU has a large online student population and some of our degrees are offered fully online. However, we do even have a lot of on-campus students who will take online classes. That's more true now than ever, but it was also the case before the pandemic. A lot of our students still took some of their classes online. So we offer tutoring in person as well as online via Zoom or asynchronously through screencasting. And we also do workshops, class visits, and open studio working sessions that happen every week where students can just drop in without an appointment. So tutors depend on each other for various needs. Acknowledging and naming the ways tutors can and should depend on each other fosters a sense of community among the tutors. Creating community is not only possible with fully in-person writing centers. We'll each talk a bit about the interdependence of our tutors and way to encourage it through interacting online.
So to talk a little bit about this particular layer of the interdependence among tutors, I'll give some examples from my particular writing center. So the tutors in my writing center have always been really stellar at collaborating with each other, but I tried to introduce some more formalized ways for collaboration last year because of the pandemic. And as I mentioned, we were fully online last year. So my new group of tutors would be entering the fall semester, feeling disconnected from their classmates without in-person classes or the chance to get to know folks in the writing center space. Many of them hadn't anticipated starting their graduate degrees this way. So we'd had a Slack channel in previous years. And for anyone who isn't familiar with Slack, it's basically a desktop or phone application where folks can chat in various channels together via text. We've often used it in the past to communicate as an office about things like running late or sharing cat pictures. But I set up some new channels and built in some parts to my training to encourage the tutors to use it to communicate more often now that we were all online. So that was something that changed quite a bit. So this made it possible for tutors to be available to answer each other's questions during shifts or help each other when technology issues arose in response to student inquiries collaboratively. I also streamlined our flex hours. Since all of my tutors work at the Writing Center as graduate assistants, some of their required hours are what we call flex hours, which are basically special projects that are related to the Writing Center. I usually let tutors just kind of pick something they're interested in and volunteer to do things or go with it. This past year, I actually created some teams based on some of the things I knew that I could use some help with, especially because last fall I had more teaching responsibilities than I had previously, which I can't explain to you how going online and giving me more teaching was helpful, but there it is. We all have issues like that. But basically, I created the teams based on some things I knew I would need help with. So I created a workshop development team, a tutor education team, a help documents team, etc. So the teams were set at the beginning of the task of creating a set of goals for their team, to plan how they were going to hold each other accountable for what they needed to get done, and how they could leverage each other's strengths to meet their goals by the semester's end. For example, our help docs team ended up deciding on creating an editorial board structure so they could create, peer review, edit, copy edit, and then upload ready to publish help documents to our website together. I cannot emphasize how helpful this was to me to not be the person who had to be in charge of dealing with that. But I really appreciated that it was their idea to create this structure so they could collaborate, still respect each other's time commitments. I mostly wanted to highlight with this example that the tutors realized that to be both productive and recognize the limitations on their time, that they found ways to depend on and work with each other that were necessary. So having that structure named and explained helped them all feel like this wasn't just on one of them to complete it. And it meant that, especially with everyone working remotely, them not feeling alone or isolated while they worked on this project, often independently, was helpful for both them and for me.
For me, in thinking about interdependence among our tutors, first I want to make sure to say too, we've got our instructors is what we call tutors. So when I talk about instructors, I'm referring to our staff who staff the Writing Center. But interdependence has been an important component of my Writing Center's culture, as we have historically had many opportunities for our instructors to share practices, get to know each other, and share interests. And many of these places for collaboration and interdependence among instructors have been a part of our Writing Center for years, but they became even more important during the pandemic. It was really highlighted once the pandemic started. First, our instructors have multiple places to process and connect with one another in more informal avenues. The collaborative paper review group was created and is facilitated by our instructors, and it's a time for instructors to join a Teams meeting room. We use Teams instead of Zoom, and work synchronously and also chat. Sometimes those discussions are about their work with students, and sometimes they're chatting more informally to connect. Similarly, our instructors have weekly huddles with their managers at the beginning of the week, during which instructors can connect, chat, ask questions, and discuss. Another opportunity for collaboration community for my Writing Center is our yearly retreat. This retreat is led by one of our senior writing instructors, and this year in particular, it was a really collaborative event where our committee of instructors and our senior writing instructor organized a day-long schedule of activities and awards and just opportunities for us to connect. The retreat is always a great way for instructors, my managers, and myself to connect, take a break from our daily work. It's all, for the most part, very much taking a break from our daily day-to-day tasks and celebrate each other. Finally, our senior writing instructor also facilitates a monthly journal club and pedagogy chats. And those are done often in collaboration with another writing instructor, where we'll either read research and discuss it or discuss a practice in our paper reviews together. So altogether, these opportunities are a really fruitful place for our instructors to generate ideas, collaborate, and discuss.
So our center was really lucky in that the first fully online semester of tutoring in fall 2020, we did not have much turnover. So that semester, we only had a couple of new tutors and everyone else was returning. So, you know, they already had the skills, they had pre-existing knowledge. And in addition to that, they'd already established relationships with each other in person, just hanging out in the studio while they were not tutoring. So as you all probably know, in general, tutors are a rather kind and friendly bunch. So the veteran tutors made sure to draw in the new tutors, even in just kind of silly day-to-day conversations. So we also use Slack, and we used it prior to the emergency remote shift. We have a random channel that gets used fairly often just for fun. We also use Slack to support each other with any questions that pop up during tutoring appointments. So tutors will write a message to the whole group, and anyone who's working and not occupied with another student will offer suggestions and support. Every once in a while, someone who isn't working will chime in just because they happen to see it on Slack. Something that I started once we were fully online was having tutors review each other's e-portfolios throughout the semester. So tutors would give each other video feedback multiple times a semester. So by the end, they've gotten their e-portfolio reviewed by 3 to 4 of their fellow tutors. Part of the reason that I did this is that when we're in person, and they were in that room as a group, they would often just casually be working on their e-portfolios and ask each other for advice, you know, like, what do you think of this color? Does this wording make sense? And that kind of thing. So this was a way to get a little of that feedback to them in that fully online environment. We also have weekly Open Studio working sessions where we work on our e-portfolios over Zoom and share the screen to get advice and impressions for improvement. We did have these before the pandemic. They were always hybrid where you could show up in person, but we always had someone online available as well. But these sessions not only help improve their e-portfolios, but they model ways of giving feedback that can then be adapted for tutoring, as well as kind of putting them in the shoes of someone receiving feedback. So they know a little bit better kind of how someone that they're tutoring might feel when they get that feedback.
I was muted, of course. So one of the other layers that we wanted to talk about is the collaboration and interdependence between tutors and administrators. I think it's pretty easy for Writing Center administrators to imagine how our tutors and consultants rely upon and depend upon us. I think it's also essential for us to remember, though, that we often rely on our tutors and consultants a lot too. And that's a very normal part of our work. Our work happens because we have fantastic teams of folks who are invested in helping students become better writers, and often incredibly passionate about that work and helping the Writing Center flourish. So this year, I really cultivated the use of the Slack channel. And then again, this year, I'm back in my office as a way to remind tutors that they can depend on me to respond and be there when I need it. Similarly, I know that I can count on them to respond during their shifts when I send them a message via Slack. And here's something that's become even more obvious to me since our move to entirely online work last year. Folks know when you value their time, including their time off. So I work with tutors to set their notifications on Slack from the very beginning of the semester. In other words, the Slack will not send them a message to their phone or to their desktop when they aren't working. It won't ping them unless they're scheduled to work. And it won't ping them unless they're tagged or messaged personally. So not every single message that goes through will require them to respond, but rather only if someone is looking for them to respond. And I personally use Slack messaging tool that allows you to schedule messages so that I don't actually send anything until a tutor is next on shift. In other words, even though I know that I need to send something to that tutor, I will send the message, but I will schedule it to happen when they go on shift rather than send immediately. And with immediate communication, I think sometimes comes the expectation that someone can and should respond anytime. And I try to make it clear that us depending on each other doesn't include making unreasonable requests on someone's time. And I also do ongoing professional development with my tutors weekly during our weekly staff meetings. So this gives me a chance to check in with everyone about how appointments are going, to collaborate together as a group about potential solutions to any issues that have come up, and to work as a group to make decisions, plan for events, and learn new things with each other to continue to our growth as tutors. In other words, I think there are a lot of ways that we depend on each other, and also creating expectations about what that interdependence looks like, I think is really important.
I love that, Meg. So for the Walden Writing Center, Interdependence between instructors and administrators is really essential to our Writing Center, although collaboration and creating community have been both simultaneously more challenging this year while even being more essential in our Writing Center. Our university, as I mentioned before, has been going through some executive leadership changes as well as some internal changes to our Success Center. And so we've spent much of 2021 navigating multiple changes, determining how or if they impact us, processing, that sort of thing. So when I think about collaboration between our instructors and administrators, like myself and my managers, it's been tough to even get a real sense of momentum in collaboration as we navigate all this uncertainty. What we have done is either continued or created 2 channels for collaboration that's always available, no matter what other changes we're thinking about. Our monthly instructor meeting and monthly collaboration meetings. And these meetings are an opportunity for us to all come together, discuss updates or ideas, and collaborate on initiatives. Most recently, for example, our collaboration meetings have focused on exploring how we can support students on a new assignment in our doctoral program. And we took that meeting as an opportunity to split up into smaller groups to explore expectations faculty had for that assignment. Another opportunity for interdependence has been in reorganization discussions our larger Center for Student Success was having this summer. We were asked to explore how we could offer more discipline-specific support in our colleges. So more discipline-specific support of our colleges. And so we formed a committee that involves staff from across our Writing Center to be involved in those discussions.
So a lot of the communication that happens among the tutors is also supported by me and the director of ePortfolio and digital initiatives. So between the two of us, we're able to field questions when other tutors might not have the answers. We have a Slack channel where tutors check in and out for their shifts that both the in-person and online tutors use, since on any given day, there are usually some tutors working within the studio space and some teleworking, including occasionally the admin team. So this is a way for them to be connected to each other, but also a way for us to know that everything's as it should be and people are available at their scheduled times, that we don't need to be messaging someone saying, like, hey, is everything good? Are you okay? Which happens every once in a while. For the most part, they're pretty good at being there when they should be. But since undergraduate student schedules are not as predictable as graduate students, we only usually have a once a month full staff meeting with them, though we're pretty much checking in with them regularly to see how things are going. For now, we're still doing the staff meetings over Zoom, just because on any given day, students might have a hard time making it to campus, and that's just one more obstacle to being able to all get together at the same time. We also have some ongoing training for the tutors through Google Classroom. I attend most of the Open Studio working sessions, so tutors get varying perspectives on their work. So it's not just from their peers, but it's also, from someone with maybe a little bit more experience. So we also offer video feedback to the tutors from the admin team, especially when they get closer to graduation. Unlike the peer review video feedback that's assigned, this is optional for them because we don't really want to force the tutors to have their e-portfolios critiqued by their supervisors, although we have pretty useful advice, if I do say so myself. But we do also depend on the tutors to kind of let us know if there's any like common things that they're seeing from students. We also rely on them to do a review of all of our tutorials every semester. So we have online tutorials written and in video, and we have the tutors review those every semester. It's a really good way for them to look through skills that they might actually not even know how to do a specific thing. But that is one way that we really rely on them to do those, because at this point we have like well over 100 tutorials. So for one person to review those, it's just really not feasible. So we rely on them a lot to do that.
Another important place interdependence can occur is between administrators at an institution. So this is the third layer we're looking at, 3 of 4. We wanted to address this aspect of interdependence because it can also vary so widely between institutions, as each institution has its own administrator culture and approaches. Nonetheless, we all work within a larger institution, and so collaboration with other administrators at our institutions can be integral to our success.
I want to preface my explanation here by saying that I realize that not everyone is lucky to have other administrators within their department or those in upper administration that are supportive of their work as Writing Center administrators. The first couple of years I felt a little out to sea because of that myself. What I have now isn't a support structure that I've always had, but the way that it has developed has allowed me to have a more sustainable way of implementing changes and growth in my Writing Center. A couple of years ago, my department hired an associate chair of the department who oversees the various moving parts of our writing or general education program, including things like our basic writing, general education, lit, and composition classes, and then the Writing Center. So each of these areas has their own director that also teaches. So in many ways, this group of administrators has often worked to support each other. So we meet regularly, I think probably once a month, to make some decisions that affect our general education and writing programs. And one of the reasons this is important is because our Writing Center really supports the composition program in particular, and we work with a lot of those instructors. So this has worked in some really practical ways to give me a chance to have a sounding board and a team of problem solvers and vice versa. But this has even helped just during the summer, for instance. We are all 12-month employees. Most of the folks in our department are not. So during the summer, even though all of our programs still were moving along, we were able to kind of step in for each other as points of contact to allow each other just to go on vacation, right? Without having to worry that something wasn't going to get taken care of while we were gone. And I think sometimes it's hard to let that happen, to hand the reins over to someone else. And take the time to relax. In fact, I believe that I told my supervisor that if I was going to let anyone do it, it would be Elle. And that I didn't really trust anybody else to be able to take care of things. But I think that it's necessary for us to find that person that we can hand the reins over to sometimes, just because it's necessary for our own work sustainability. For me, it's been helpful to know that I'm not expected to solve all the challenges that arise alone. I've also worked with Elle a lot, even though Elle and I aren't necessarily in the same like umbrella program. We do use the same scheduling system. And so trying to make decisions about how things are supposed to look and to keep things in uniform or consistent across both schedules so that students know how to use that scheduling system and there aren't as many questions is something that we both worked on together, including just the language that we use for the types of services that we offer and trying to keep that consistent for students. And to be honest, Elle is the one that I know who I can rely on, that if my tutors need help and they can't get a hold of me, I know they could go to Elle and she'd be able to answer those questions. And in fact, she has answered some of those questions and helped them. I think just today she had to help a tutor reset a password. So our conversations have also helped me anticipate a lot of potential challenges before they become challenges, which has made my work a lot easier in the long run, just because I've been able to depend on that communication back and forth. I'll also mention that our university has decided they're also creating a university writing council. And Elle and I are both on it, and we're hoping that this means that upper administration, that we can cultivate those relationships and hopefully get some more support from other folks on campus too.
For me, collaboration between administrators at my writing center has been particularly front and center in 2021. That's partly because of my position, but also, as I've mentioned, we've continued to navigate the pandemic and ongoing changes within our institution. As I mentioned previously, we were tasked with identifying how we could provide more discipline-specific student support this year. And because of that focus, there's been a much bigger focus on collaboration with other associate directors within my writing center, so my direct peers, but also with other faculty and college administration at Walden and with other student support departments as well. For example, when we first began talking about the shift to discipline-specific support, one of the first meetings I and my other ADs had was with our librarian colleagues who had provided college liaisons for a long time. That was the model that they used, and they know the pros and cons of being closely associated with the colleges. So hearing from the librarians was such a fruitful and essential point of interdependence for us in our discussions. We also were able to follow up and ask them about different options and get their input there. So that was really helpful for us. We have also been collaborating with the Director of Disability Services at our university, who has been a close collaborator in providing students inclusive support. More recently, we've been able to rely on her to help us navigate inclusive practices for staff support as well. And that's been a really fruitful collaboration and improvement for us within our center. And finally, this year, we also formed a new management team for our writing instructors. So 2 of our 3 previous managers had left their positions. And so within our writing center, we've been intentionally working to ensure that with our new managers, there's a clear point of contact and discussions with other members of leadership within our writing center. And I and my managers have also been purposely creating clear places for us to collaborate, communicate, and discuss items. So this includes for us a Monday morning leadership meeting we have each Monday to set the agenda for the week. The managers also have twice weekly meetings themselves to collaborate and discuss. And then I've established quarterly retreats for our managers and myself. I call these retreats in quotes because they aren't really a break from work, but they are dedicated time set aside for us to engage in discussions, collaborate, and work through problems. This year has been full of so much change and uncertainty for our writing center that these dedicated times have been so helpful to allow us to slow down and focus on topics, issues, and discussions that could easily be pushed to the side. So for us, the intentional creation of these channels for collaboration has been really essential to our interdependence and embracing interdependence.
So first, I want to say thank you, Meg, for your kind words. I am really lucky that I have been able to work with Meg first as a mentor and now more as a colleague. It's true, we bounce ideas off each other a lot and often present at conferences together as we're doing right now. In my actual department, I'm part of a 2-person admin team. So our director's main focus is faculty support while I run the student support side of things. However, we collaborate and support each other so much. In fact, she's here today because she wanted to show support for me doing this session. So I'm really lucky in that I have a lot of support really close to me in my position. As far as our program goes, we're still a growing program. So each time a department or a program decides to implement ePortfolios, it means we need to provide support for faculty as well as students. We run training for faculty with stipends for adding an ePortfolio element to their course. We provide workshops throughout the year, both on digital pedagogy, but also for faculty's own ePortfolios. We really feel if you're going to assign it to students, you should probably, practice what you preach a little bit and work on your own ePortfolio. This also gives faculty kind of an idea of, what is the process? What is it like? so they have a little more empathy for when their students are working on them. As Meg said, ODU is starting a University Writing Council that our team was appointed to, so we'll be collaborating with Meg and the other members on that. And the ePortfolio Studio collaborates a lot with the Writing Center. Both the director and myself, we both come from an English background, a composition rhetoric background. So that is really important to us. The Writing Center is definitely one of our most important partners, but we also collaborate with the Library Learning Commons, other high impact practices on campus, like service learning and learning communities. And we do also do work with career development services, though we like to stress that even though ePortfolios are a great tool for job searches and that kind of thing, it's really the reflective practices and the learning that they encourage that we like to emphasize. And we also provide a lot of grant support, as ePortfolios can serve as an ideal tangible deliverable at the conclusion of projects. And the level of interdependency with some of these can sometimes be a little one-sided, but we're always working to make it a little bit more of a kind of collaborative thing when we get called on to do this grant support.
I have got to remember the mute button. The last layer that we want to talk about is the interdependence and collaboration among the Writing Center community at large, and specifically the ways that each of us utilizes that community in ways that benefit us, but also the potential we see within that larger community to continue to benefit each other. So for instance, even just being able to share, to learn from each other in a conference setting like we're doing right now. So for me, the Writing Center Directors Facebook group has been pretty valuable to me for being able to get some quick answers to questions just about even day-to-day practical going-ons of the Writing Center. Last year, being able to quickly confirm that it was in fact Writing Center Online that was down, and not just a local user error or a local network error, saved me so much time and energy, just to know that it was not just me that was having those issues. It also allowed me to quickly find a way to help my tutors get their online tutoring back on track if I knew that it was something that we could take care of really quickly, and that it was just that WC Online was down. In fact, by that point, I'd become so used to the Facebook group coming up with answers to those questions. I felt pretty confident that I'd get a quick answer if I asked there. Usually I would find out quicker from them than WC Online's tech support. So that was always very helpful. While informal, I realized that I often depended on, professional Writing Center organizations, even just in those online spaces. And in more official capacities, I've depended on the professional Writing Center organizations to help me and my tutors learn more about topics important to our Writing Center work that I'm not necessarily an expert in. For instance, Janelle Dempsey's recent OWCA webinar on the Introduction to Digital Accessibility Principles really changed how I created and conducted presentations moving forward. And it provided me with a tool to help my tutors revise things like our help documents for accessibility in very practical ways. And the tutors that are working on our help docs this year have actually watched the webinar and are revising our materials based on that webinar that Janelle gave. So it's the webinars like that, or our conferences like this one, or IWCA, that often give me some new ideas and help reinvigorate me and my passion to kind of take on some new challenges and try new things in my Writing Center. I can also say that the IWCA mentoring program was really helpful to me too. It made possible for me to be able to talk about my work as a director when I first began as an admin. I often felt very isolated my first year from the rest of the university and even my department, as our Writing Center is not even in the same building. So I often didn't even see my colleagues on the regular basis. Being able to chat with somebody else, doing the same type of work really helped me to remember that I wasn't doing this work alone, and that my tutors were also doing this work along with me, and I could rely on their support and help too. Because of my time in that mentorship program, I actually began working with one of my tutors at the time on some ways that we could revise our training, make it more robust. And I actually ended up co-authoring a chapter for an edited collection with that tutor about our work doing that revision of that training. And she is still one of my favorite co-authors to this day, and we still like to work together. So, you know, I found a lot of the things that the larger Writing Center community has given to me incredibly helpful since I became an admin.
So for me, my focus this year within the wider Writing Center community has been my involvement in OWCA, and specifically working with the Mentoring and Resources Committee to re-envision the OWCA's mentoring program. So Meg, your mention of the IWCA mentoring program is a great lead into this. In the first year of the pandemic, we had set up a mentor match program with the OWCA, previously OWC. And now this year with the committee, we've been working to re-envision that program as a group mentoring program. And every step of this work has involved collaboration with our committee members and has been focused on creating community, which I found really valuable. Our goal of focusing on group mentoring is to create a space where participants can connect with others in the Writing Center community without a hierarchy. And we've also approached every step of developing the program in a collaborative way, gathering input from past mentor matching participants, but also approaching the research, program development, registration process, and training and support collaboratively as a committee. It's been a really fruitful and rewarding collaboration with my fellow Writing Center folks. Shameless plug, registration for cohort 1 of our group mentoring program is now open and free for all OWCA members. So I do encourage you to register if you're interested. I've got the links linked on the slides that are going to be accessible, but I'll also pop it into the chat box. And cohort 1 will run from January through June. So I also appreciate the opportunity for shameless promotion, as our committee and all of our committee members from across the Writing Center community have worked so hard to put together this program for OWCA. So I'll pop that in the chat box.
Yeah, Beth, I'm really excited for the mentoring program that you guys have developed. I think it's going to be really, really helpful to a lot of people. So I have also really benefited from the connections I've made in OWCA, especially during the shift to emergency remote teaching. It just really helps having people to talk to who are in a similar situation, even if some of the details might be different. You know, sometimes we're doing productive idea sharing. Sometimes we're just, you know, complaining to someone who actually understands what we're talking about. I'm also part of GSOL, which is the Global Society of Online Literacy Educators. They have some Writing Center folks, but it isn't geared specifically towards them. But I'm working on their annual conference, partly to assist with the next OWCA conference and get, you know, some ideas from them, but also just it's a chance to meet people in the online literacy field. And that particular organization has a lot of really great people who work in that field. The first IWCA conference I attended was actually with Meg, and we presented together. And she actually introduced me to all the other future officers of the OWCA Executive Board. And that was 2018, I think. But so these conferences put on by Writing Centers associations are just really crucial to keep us connected, keep us sharing ideas. I've had the chance to publish with colleagues because of the SWCA conference. I was able to meet with other treasurers of Writing Centers associations through an event that I believe was organized by the Rocky Mountain Writing Centers Association. So if I'm wrong and you know, you can correct me in the chat. I was also able to bring in speakers for ongoing tutor training. One of them was Janelle, who gave a workshop for them on accessibility for ePortfolios. So sometimes because of our center's focus more on digital composition, I felt a little bit on the outskirts, but I've just gone ahead and pretty much forced myself into the Writing Center community since they're a group of people passionate about writing and learning and supporting students.
All right, I'm gonna wrap us up here as we went through all our different layers, just to really emphasize a couple things about interdependence that we discovered as we worked on this presentation, this plenary. So as we've illustrated through our various examples of interdependence at various levels, so we talked about among tutors, between administrators and tutors, between administrators, and between administrators and the Writing Center community, interdependence is really essential to the work we do. And for me, by fostering collaboration, creating community, and embracing and sustainability, we're able to better serve our students and better support each other. That's really at the heart of it. Interdependence both challenges us to build through collaboration and sustain what we do through support of one another. And in this way, interdependence both moves us forward in our Writing Center practices while encouraging us to do so in a way that doesn't lead to burnout. So we hope that our exploration of interdependence within our local context has prompted you to think about the role interdependency plays in your own writing center, or maybe the ways you can better embrace interdependency. So with that, we can go to the last slide, and we really just wanted to spend the remaining time we have today on Q&A. So I'm wondering if we have a particular approach we want to take with Q&A, if folks want to unmute, or if we want to watch people in the chat box. Either way works for me.
Thanks so much, everyone, for the presentation. In terms of Q&A, yes, if anyone has a question, could you please raise your hand in the chat? If you don't feel like speaking your question aloud, you can go ahead and enter it into the chat in text, and we will read it aloud for you.
Perfect.
I think we have enough time for one or two.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I had a question for the panel, actually. In just thinking generally about some of the practices that you all talked about, a lot of them specifically kind of started over the course of the pandemic. And you talked a little bit about how some of those policies and practices are evolving as we start to transition maybe back into the new normal. So I was wondering which of those practices moving forward you think are going to be enduring, that are really going to be useful in the long term versus things that were maybe a little bit of a triage?
So I would say not, for me personally, not relying on the fact that I can just like walk in and talk to someone about something necessarily. So it forced me to have a lot more like robust like documents for training and like really planned out stuff and like resources for the tutors to have access to, rather than knowing that, oh, I can just go into the center and like sit with them and talk to them and that kind of thing. So that would be my thing that I just have really built a more robust kind of back end of documents.
I think for me, the thing that I'm going to keep and that I think I have to keep is for the tutors that are doing some extra stuff for the Writing Center beyond tutoring. I really just need to kind of hand the reins over to them and let them make decisions about how they want that work to play out and how they want to work and collaborate with each other. Letting them set the goals and the expectations for each other has made my life a lot easier. And I actually think that they've been more productive because of it too, which has just helped them and our Writing Center in general. So for me, that would definitely be what I'm going to keep, and is probably one of the most important things, I think. in terms of interdependence. Like I can't and should not do all the things.
I'll just add, I think for us, we've been able to create a lot of connections across the university this year because of all the change and uncertainty we've been going through and trying to like figure out what to do with all of the change and uncertainty. And those relationships have been so helpful and fruitful and just like continuing those up, because when you start from scratch and creating those relationships across the institution, it can take a lot of time to gain trust and to build those like grooves of collaborating together across the university. And I don't want to lose those. So I'm thinking about how to sustain those relationships, even if we're not actively working on a project together or getting input on something, how we can continue those so that we can continue to rely on each other and work together in the future.
Thanks so much for those responses. I think our last question is going to go to Megan Mize. Did you want to read your question aloud, or would you like me to do so?
No, I'm happy to do it. First of all, thank you, ladies. This was a wonderful panel. I always enjoy hearing folks extrapolate from their experiences. And Elle sort of gestured to something I was thinking about throughout the description of these relationships. Interdependence means there's an exchange between parties, needs on both sides. So what happens when maybe it's a one-way flow? What are some really effective strategies for ensuring that that there is an exchange to keep us from burning out, to keep us sustained?
So I will say first that as hard as it is, part of it has to be that we have to be willing to be honest with people and say that sometimes things aren't possible. Or there are times when I've had folks that ask for something in the time frame that they're asking for is just really not reasonable. And so I will say things like, I would be happy to do 1, 2, and 3, but I really need your support doing 4, 5, and 6 in order to make that happen. Or there have been times where if I'm really not getting that back and forth, sometimes I just have to tell people, I just have to be transparent with you. I'm not able to accommodate that at this time. And I think that can be really hard because we don't want to send the message that we're not willing to collaborate or help. So I think that like kind of reorienting or helping folks see that if they're looking for something from us, sometimes we really need that reciprocated too in order to make that happen, can be a good way of doing it. And sometimes like just saying no, which is often hard to do, and I often don't like doing it, but I've gotten into the habit where I actually have like drafted like template emails that are basically like, I think that's a wonderful idea if you can do, and I just have blanks left in that I can fill in, that would be amazing, and we can do it by maybe this time frame. But if that's not really something you can do right now, I also am not able to do that right now. So that's my thoughts. And I guess like that way, like you're encouraging people to collaborate with you. But if they're able to say, hey, I don't have the time to do that collaboration, then you can say, yeah, me either.
I was gonna say, Margaret, I love that because I also think about like the power differentials for interdependency, and that is so hard when there's like power differentials and someone is coming, which has happened. I think what you're describing sometimes, right? Like it's hard to know how you can say no to someone who has a power differential at your university. And I think that your approach of like saying yes, and let's think about it this way is really important. And what I was also thinking about is the way that even that response can also be a collaboration. I've like talked with others who've said like, I have this ask of me, I can't make that happen. How can I approach this person who has a power differential? And we've like, oh, maybe you can say yes to this, but say no to this, or say yes to this, but a longer timeline or something like that. And I think another strategy is getting another person's input on like, here's the ask, I can't do that. What do you think I could do in response to make this more manageable? And that can be like, it doesn't have to be you alone who comes up with those options. The other person can help, but also someone who's your peer or a fellow colleague or a tutor. Like it can be other people too. So not viewing it as something you alone have to solve is, I think, a great approach as well.
This has been a great conversation. I'm glad we've had some ideas exchanged and some maybe ideas for moving forward, but I wanted to be mindful of the time. So I'm going to go ahead and share our final screen. If Megan, you can go. So thank you again to our presenters, and thank you to our interpreters from More Interpreting this evening. Thanks so much. And thank you all for attending and joining us for our very first session of the Online Writing Centers Association inaugural conference. It's very exciting. So a couple of quick announcements. If you want to get more involved in OWCA, we have opportunities for volunteering, including serving on the executive board. Applications are going to be due October 31st. We also have committees that you can serve on. You can find out more information about these various roles on our website at onlinewritingcenters.org/volunteer. I'd also like to give a shout out for events later this week. Our next one coming up is this Wednesday, October 6th at 2 p.m. Eastern. That is going to be a meet and greet with the OWCA Executive Board. On Thursday and Friday, we will have synchronous sessions from various presenters. So that will include panel presentations and workshops. So I hope that we will get to see some of you throughout the week. And once again, just thank you to our presenters and thank you to More Interpreting. Have a lovely evening and see you later this week.